You might have seen the Christopher Nolan film, The Odyssey, but do you really know the full story? Not if you've not seen the 80s TV show Ulysses 31. So, me and my colleague Ryan Lambie grew up in an era where Ulysses 31 was playing on the telly, and these are his words, and very much my heart as well. And I mean, let me take you back. Let me take you right back. So, the space station is as quiet and empty as a tomb. Exploring its deserted corridors, Ulysses and his travelers find a lone astronaut in suspended animation. Briefly opening his eyes, he murmurs, "The crew, save the crew." He talks about a stricken vessel trapped somewhere between fire and ice. Now, Ulysses, with his beard, never one to shy away from a rescue mission, rushes out in his ship. He leaves his son, Telemachus, the boy's robot sidekick. No, small robot, alien girl Yumi. They're all left behind on the empty station. A foolish move because it all turns out to be another trap set by the vengeful god Zeus. And then you get this booming voice saying, "Ulysses, you're forced to choose your fate." There's Scylla, who's here depicted as a raging inferno with the face of a dog. Charybdis, a freezing whirlpool churning in space. Take your pick. And then, this is kids' TV, folks. Back on the abandoned ship, Telemachus is being menaced by the astronaut and his zombie-like body possessed by the gods. That's episode 12 of Ulysses 31, this animated series that first aired on UK television in the early 1980s. It was on at tea time. It was a French-Japanese co-production with one killer theme tune. And it took stories from Greek mythology, projected them into the distant Star Wars-influenced future. And so Odysseus, here given his Latin name of Ulysses, right? He's not Matt Damon anymore. He's a laser sword-wielding space traveller with prog rock hair and a flowing beard, much like myself. Now, Ulysses 31 was aimed squarely at kids, so it had all the cutesy elements of the era to try and catch their eye. There was like this unofficial rule in the early 80s that cartoons had to contain your cuddly comic relief character, and so there was no, utterly useless no was, but reliably on hand to provide a bit of slapstick. But the thing is, if you strip away the squeaky voice kids, the pratfalling robots, Ulysses 31 was really eerie. It was really chilly. So each episode of this show was based on a mythological vignette. And okay, the show's writers would bend the tales to make them a bit sci-fi leaning or child friendly. But the overall tone was, here is a hostile universe filled with characters enthralled to Zeus. And Zeus here is like some Zardos-like floating head who condemns Odysseus to eternity of roaming the stars. And so as a result, wherever Ulysses and his beard went, there were these monsters or characters who just seemed benign, but had all these hidden agendas. So it might sound really frivolous to mention a 45-year-old animated cartoon series in the same video as the Odyssey, a $250 million epic made by one of the most respected filmmakers on the planet. But then there are parallels here between the series created by Nina Wallmark and Jean Chalopin and Christopher Nolan's latest spectacular. I mean, fundamentally, they're both based, of course, on Homer's Odyssey. So there's overlap in terms of which slices of the myth they choose to pick out. But what they both do is take this story and interpret it in their own ways. So Nolan's film is set in ancient times, and it's the director's own fantastical vision of the past rather than a slavishly accurate recreation of it. Ulysses 31 is set right in the future, and characters talk in a modern vernacular. You've got hyper stylized costumes. You've got, Christopher Nolan's happy to depart from Homer's depiction of events when it suits him, and he'll bring in story elements for other epic poems as well. And all the same, you've got the cartoon Ulysses and the incarnation of Odysseus, who's played by Matt Damon this summer, undergoing a similar series of trials. I mean, they're both on a voyage home when they're cursed by the gods. They both spend years lost in the unknown. Now, Nolan depicts the fate of Odysseus and his crew as this endless cycle of horror, with his ship's crew sailing for months after months after months before running low on food and being forced to, well, yes, stop at an island and find supplies. Those islands contain an increasingly terrifying series of figures, including the huge Cyclops, Polyphemus, a race of armored giants, and then like Circe, Samantha Morton's scene-stealing performance, right? So those are all in the Odyssey. But Ulysses 31's got quite a lot of similar moments, albeit rendered in its retro futuristic anime style. And so it was animated by Tokyo Movie Shinsha. And in Ulysses 31, Ulysses slays the Cyclops. Here, though, a gigantic robot with a snake-like neck. He does this in order to save his son, which sees he and his crew then thrown into unknown space. He meets Circe, just as his big screen counterpart does. He has to deal with the deadly song of the sirens in much the same way of Damon's Odysseus. And he's fed memory loss inducing lotus flowers by the enigmatic Calypso. Now, Nolan's The Odyssey also contains a sequence where Odysseus must choose his fate between Scylla and between Charybdis. And the director's take on it is a massive filmmaking achievement, a collision of in-camera effects and, we guess, puppetry melded together with a bit of CG to cover the joints. Christopher Nolan wouldn't tell you that, though. But what's fascinating about Nolan's film and this little show from the 1980s is they both achieve something similar. So The Odyssey, the Nolan film, brings with it a sense of the unknown that's more profound. Certainly, talking to Ryan, this is very much his feeling on it as well, that it's more profound than Nolan's space-faring epic Interstellar. So if you put those side by side. And so, I mean, with The Odyssey, what Nolan manages to do is take our planet, which is now so precisely mapped and charted, and you can Google map it all you like, but he suddenly makes it feel vast and unfamiliar again. We're in strange waters. The sea becomes this treacherous monster. Compare that to, I don't know, the sea you get in Rise of Skywalker, where you're looking at it and you're just thinking, that's computer sea. Not here. I mean, it just feels real. This sea bears Odysseus' ship, threatens to dash it into pieces. And there's footage online of people who watch this in 4DX, by the way. You're braver than me. Merely setting foot on an island in the Odyssey is an act of bravery. And as in a dream, they're just places where anything can happen. And that moments like this are as powerful, as awe-inspiring as anything Nolan's put on screen before, we'd argue. However, for all its technical and format limitations, and Ulysses 31 was a far more economical production, it's such an achievement in itself. I mean, considering the audience it was going into as well, his planets are really spooky and sad and full of doomed characters, all desperate for escape. And in episode after episode, we're shown these landscapes where space-age technology and ancient stone architecture merge together. Sisyphus lives on what's like basically a planet-sized factory that manufactures the same ball of junk that he's forced to push up a hill for eternity. Hades is a vast temple where human figures ride an escalator into oblivion. It's like a more sinister version of a matter of life and death there. But also, what Ulysses 31 also highlights is just like the absurdity, really, of a lot of the online debate surrounding the Odyssey. So ahead of the release of Nolan's film, there were all these posts and stream of YouTube videos that spoke angrily about the film's lack of historical accuracy, the diversity of its casting, and leaving aside like what was underlying much of that and much of the click-seeking outrage, it sort of misses the point of what Homer's original poem actually was. A work of literature, but it's widely agreed to also be an oral tradition that stretched back many years before it was ever written down. These are stories that have been told and retold over multiple generations, each teller adding their own embellishments over time. Now, adapting an ancient poem isn't the same as unfaithfully adapting a best-selling novel, but then it's arguable that even adaptations that take liberties can still be brilliant. This has been recorded in the summer. Come Christmas, we'll be around the telly watching The Muppet Christmas Carol, one of the most faithful adaptations of Charles Dickens's work filmed to date. Had it been made in 2026, well, I would suggest that some people online would probably be making YouTube videos screaming that there were no felt puppet frogs in the 19th century. Maybe there were. I don't know. Look, Ulysses 31 and The Odyssey are but two retellings of a 2,800-year epic. Both have cultural value beyond entertainment. In the 80s, this children's TV show brought Greek mythology to a generation of youngsters who might have otherwise considered it some kind of dusty relic. Sure, they added whizzing spaceships and laser swords, love them, but also it forged a connection between the modern mythology of Star Wars, which was still phenomenally popular in the 1980s, and the ancient stories that underpinned it. Then you get 2026, The Odyssey, which reimagines Homer's saga for a modern multiplex audience. It lashes its stories of gods and monsters to the more familiar mass of comic book movies, of revenge thrillers, of contemporary horror. I mean, it's interesting, the aftermath of the release of the film, Nolan said he's interested in making a horror movie again, as he said after Oppenheimer. To a degree with The Odyssey, that is what he has done. And sure, although it's set in the distant past, Nolan still gives it a modern spin. There's talk of Troy controlling trade routes, while the war itself is depicted as cruel and unjust. I mean, this is resonant stuff. So, whether he's called Ulysses and has an amazing beard, or Odysseus, whether he flies a spaceship or sails on the high seas, the characters' encounters will continue to be reworked and retold. And in the process, they'll reveal new facets of both the original stories and the current times that we live in. And, you know, as a double bill, the entirety of Ulysses 31 and The Odyssey might take some time to watch, but by Lord, I'd suggest it's going to be worth it. Full credit to Ryan Lambie for writing all this down and letting me say it out loud. And if the copyright police allow us, let's bring on that Ulysses 31 theme tune.